The EPA budget request totals $11 billion.
Are you an engineer?
It's the largest.
Are you an engineer? And are you aware that coal,
I am the administrator of the EPA.
All right, the plant, because you don't listen. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I think the question is ridiculous.
That's not true. No, it doesn't.
Oh, it very much is true.
Tesla, and you have taken extraordinary power, which is not granted by Congress.
The EPA budget request totals $11 billion, an increase of $1.8 billion over the enacted level.
How many requests have been submitted to the agency for a jurisdictional determination since the conforming rule was finalized in September, and how many of those have been approved? I understand that many of the requests are being elevated to headquarters for a decision. What percentage of the requests are being elevated, and how long are those reviews taking? And finally, what guidance is the EPA staff using to make jurisdictional determinations under both the pre-2015 framework and the conforming rule? Aside from what is already public on your website, are there other guidance documents or memos that have been issued or that you are planning to issue, and can you make those documents public so that the regulated parties can understand how you are implementing WOTUS?
Well, thank you for that question, Mr. Chairman. And yes, this has been an issue that has ping-ponged for a number of years, decades. I will say this, that I committed to following the science and following the law when I took this role. And when the Sackett case was, the decision came from the Supreme Court, that is no different. We are following the law. The Sackett decision was very prescribed, and so we issued guidance quickly after issuing our revised rule last fall, and continue to work with the Army Corps to be sure that we are following the implementation desires of the Supreme Court. What I will say is, with the finalization of that rule in 2023, the Army Corps of Engineers has resumed issuing jurisdictional determinations that were previously paused in light of the Sackett decision. We've codified the clarifications, codified and clarified exclusions in support of farmers like prior converted cropland, and for ranchers like the artificial ponds used for drinking water. So there were a lot of good things that were preserved as well. What I can do is circle back with you on the specific number of requests that we've received and what those percentages look like.
I don't know if you want to say more about the regulatory actions that you're taking.
Well, we're very sensitive to this issue. Number one, thank you for securing that $16 million in research grant funding so that we can better understand how it is impacting our food supply. I will say that FDA, USDA, EPA, we are doing the proper research, again, to properly understand what the risk is for this biosolid application. But to cut to the chase, two things. The first is we are intent on holding the polluters accountable. We do not want our farmers, we do not want our water systems, we do not want taxpayers and communities bearing the burden of some of these unfortunate situations. And so in terms of our regulations, we are tightening down our regulations to ensure in our drinking water that these forever chemicals are not making it into the bodies of our parents, our children, our grandparents, while also pursuing enforcement action for those who have put these into the environment. At EPA, we've worked really hard to look at our enforcement discretion opportunities there. And what we're doing is we're, again, looking at how we enforce the laws and ensuring that our farmers and our water utilities are not the unintended victims of any of EPA's actions to contain and regulate this pervasive and long-standing chemical.
I got to ask up front, climate change. Have you ever read the 2017 multi-agency climate report?
No, I can't say I have.
You know, it's amazing that no secretary has. That wasn't my report. It just happened when we signed it. But no secretary has actually read the multi-agency definitive 2017 report. So let me ask you this. Since you're not aware of it, I'll just enlighten you. It has 200 models and 1,000 variables. According to the report, you can paint it as no impact or global nuclear combat, depending on the model. So I caution, Mr. Secretary, to be careful. Secondly, are you aware that China is the world's largest producer of CO2?
I am.
nearly twice as much as the U.S.? Are you also aware that China, 90% of the plastic is in the ocean comes from 4 rivers in China? Are you aware of that?
I was not aware of that.
So when you talk about environmental justice, do any of these regulations have anything to do with the world's largest polluter, both on sea and land and in the air?
I can say that I am not basing our decisions or aspiring to be China.
Right,
We're
but,
not
but,
aspiring
but
to be China.
you're globally conscious.
I am very
All right.
globally conscious.
Well, I'm also conscious.
and want to be
of-
competitive.
Right, competitive.
Yes.
And that's a funny term. So competitiveness, as far as manufacturing goes, how important is energy cost to that?
Oh, it's very important.
Okay, so your recent rule that you did on mercury toxins, are you aware that targets Colstrip in Montana?
I'm aware
Page
that
80.
93% of our coal facilities will be compliant.
Page 80 is targeted.
Will be complying with that
So-
rule. But the coal facility that you referenced, it is the highest emitter in the country.
It's at 99.8.3, I think, as far as toxins goes. And this rule that you put up, do you think it'll have an effect on costs of power in Montana?
Is this the mercury air toxic rule?
Yeah.
We've taken a look at, number one, I will say, for all of the rules that we announced.
So are you aware that energy costs will go up?
No.
About $1,000 a family. So you add $28,000 is what the Bidenomics cost, and then another $1,000 a year. So where are you going to get the power?
Well,
When you
I-
take that offline, where are you going to get the power?
I think we just disagree with the $1,000 number, and I'm not quite sure the underpinning of the 28,000. But our analysis shows that rule will have over the years less than a 1% increase in energy cost. We've done specific analysis on the combination of the mercury rule, the
So
effluent
are
guidelines
you
rule.
saying that taking power offline will decrease power costs?
We don't intend to take
Oh, okay.
any power
so
offline.
you know, Montana Power, or no, I'm sorry, the Colstrip is a significant producer of power in Montana. You take it off, it's going to cost about $1,000 in there. And you say, well, cleanup. Since you're on the cleanup, and I do agree, cleanup's a problem. So what are you going to do with your administration's push on EV? The fact that 90% of the solar cells in this country go to some landfill that are past their life cycle. So does the EPA have a plan for that?
We do, and I will
So
say...
where's the rule for that? Because you have a rule to take down our power system, so we're less competitive, and you pointed out that we have to be competitive.
Well,
Energy costs are, I can guarantee you, energy costs make America competitive. So when you take power offline and there's no plan to put more power or substitute the power, that's going to raise energy costs. That's basic economics. And when you say about we want to be globally competitive, labor costs, commodity costs, and power and innovation, those are the costs that drive manufacturing. We can't pay the same costs as China on labor, even though China is the largest polluter. So we're not going to be competitive on labor. The cost of steel is the same in Pennsylvania as it is in South Korea. Yeah. Where America's competitiveness is innovation and power.
I agree with
and
that.
when your administration and you attack America's power without having a reasonable accommodation and replacement, it's going to make power costs go up. And my concern from a Montana perspective is this. Montana gets a little cold. So when my co-op said we already have a power grid problem, and then when you're dictating where the power comes from in Montana, our power system itself can't handle it. So when winters become 20 degrees below zero, it's a little problem out there. And I can tell you, part of the being upset is that D.C. doesn't listen to outside the Beltway. So when you put regulations that target our number one power producer, and you know that China is producing them all the time. They're making new coal strips. They're the biggest polluter in the world, and yet we're focused on Montana in 20-degree winters. I get concerned. So do you share that same concern?
Well, I would say that, we're not targeting Montana, and in all honesty,
Page 80,
the
page 80 of the rule specifically targets Colstrip, so you are targeting Montana.
Colstrip can make the same investments in controlling mercury that North Carolina does, that West Virginia does, that North Dakota does.
Are you an engineer?
It's the largest.
Are you an engineer? And are you aware that
I am the administrator of the EPA.
All right, the plants were designed and manufactured during different periods. You realize that?
Yeah, yeah.
So you take one plant and say it's going to meet.
93% of the coal facilities in this country have magically figured out how to control mercury at a level that doesn't produce this toxic for our children. And I will tell you this, there are 4 years to comply with this rule. My folks have talked to the people at Colstrip. We know that there can be investments that can be made to meet this rule. Colstrip has said that they're going to be online through the 2040s. All we're saying is if you're going to be online through the 2040s, make the same investments that 93%
just
of
so I
coal
have this
across
straight.
this
So
country
you
make.
talked to Colstrip on the record, and Colstrip said that they can comply with this rule, with this toxin rule, and be competitive, and be in functions and running till 2040s. Is that what Colstrip told you? Because that's what you just told the committee.
Our analysis shows
No,
that
did Colstrip say, because you said that
I said we've
Colstrip-
talked to him. I said we've talked to him.
Okay.
We've engaged. We've
All right,
listened.
and has Colstrip said this?
Well, I don't know exactly if Colstrip.
I know you don't know exactly
agreed.
because I have the notes from Colstrip what they said. Exactly.
Well, if
And
Colstrip has been cheating the system this entire
so
time,
Colstrip
then
has
you-
been cheating the system.
well, 93% of coal plants have complied with EPA regulations and will comply with this new MATS rule. Colstrip is the highest emitting facility in the country. It's the highest emitting facility in this country. I believe that the children in Montana deserve the same protection.
Have you ever been
as
out to
children
Montana?
in North
Have
Carolina.
you ever been out to Montana?
In all fairness, and this is a joke.
No, have you ever been out to Montana?
You said you were going to invite me last year. I did not.
Well, you
get
know
an
what?
invitation.
I think we should go out, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to invite you to Colstrip. Post haste.
Yes.
And you can explain how Colstrip told you that they can comply with the mercury and they can be in business up to 2040 according to your
I didn't say
testimony.
Colstrip said that they would do it. I said that our analysis shows that they can, and they need.
at
And they
what
need to
cost?
be. And they need to be.
At what cost, sir?
Our analysis shows that it's a cost-benefit investment. That this is a cost-available technology that 93%. Again, this is important. 93% of coal plants across this country are going to be shown to comply with this rule. Colstrip consistently is the highest emitter in the country.
Does Colstrip meet the Clean Air Act? Does Colstrip also remove 99.6% of hazardous air pollutants? And are they in complete compliance with the American Clean Air Act?
Hey, listen, I didn't paint Colstrip as a bad guy.
You just did.
All I said was
just did.
All I said was in terms of the mercury air toxic standard.
I'll
they are
invite
the
you back.
highest
But
emitter.
on record, you have said that Colstrip has talked to you, and they can make the adjustments to be in business till 2040.
No, you've added a ton of words. I said that our agency
I'm not
has
sure.
engaged.
So what did Colstrip actually tell
Our
you?
agency has engaged with Colstrip. We are listening to the industry. Our analysis shows that they can make cost-effective investments to reduce mercury to protect children in Montana, just
And
like
that's your
North Carolina,
analysis.
North Carolina,
And does Colstrip agree with your
West Virginia.
analysis? Does
Hey,
Colstrip agree with us?
it appears to me that
because you
Colstrip-
don't listen. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Environmental justice. This is not a picture of environmental justice. And I don't get upset about many things. I keep pretty stoic about stuff. But this is not made up. This is a legitimate picture of children being used to mine cobalt for batteries for EVs that we use. So I ask you, does this not conflict with your equity action plan?
I think the question is ridiculous. All of us agree and think that child labor is abhorrent. Okay, number one. Number two, there is no such thing as an EPA EV mandate. If you read the rule, you will see that in consultation with the industry, that there are numerous options for meeting the emissions goals: plug-in hybrids, advanced biofuels, cleaner burning fuel efficiency vehicles, and EVs. Number three, I think that under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act, that there are billions of dollars that have been invested in domestic manufacturing, which we're seeing in states like North Carolina, West Virginia, Georgia, Nevada. I also know that EPA is a part of a government-wide approach to look at how we expedite the mining and the procurement of these critical minerals, both domestically and encouraging this in other countries, that will help us remain globally competitive. China's going to produce its cars, its batteries. The goal is for us not to be reliant on these technologies that, quite frankly, we're seeing the market uptake continue to move forward on. I would also argue that as you see companies like GM and Ford and Stellantis and Toyota run $7 million Super Bowl ads, they themselves are saying the future is electric. They themselves are saying, give us some certainty so we can compete and develop some of these technologies domestically for American jobs. And so I just sort of reject the premise that as the market demand encourages new technologies like EVs, like plug-in hybrids.
That's not true. No, it doesn't.
Oh, it very much is true.
Tesla just laid off 2,700 people because they're not selling their cars. So don't talk about the
Tesla
market.
now can't
If you
compete
pay
with
these
GM,
companies,
Chrysler, and Stellantis.
if you pay these companies to build something, they will do it until the money runs out, just like the windmills. If you pay them money to build it, they will come. So let's move on just a little bit. I'm about out of time. It seems that in the last few years, the EPA has transformed from an agency that is responsible for cleaning up PFAS, which years ago we didn't know was as bad as we know now. I think that's admirable, and partnering with states to do that is good. But what you have done in the last few years is become a super Congress, a super governor in our federalist system. We have elected officials in our states, in our cities, in our legislatures that do this job. We have our own agencies in Texas, which does a great job of doing this. And you have taken extraordinary power, which is not granted by Congress and only by executive order, not by law, to do the things you're doing. And it's time we wield you back.
And so I certainly don't want to be combative
Sure.
in asking my questions, but it seems to me like you're passing rules for companies to adhere to certain standards, and now we're hiring people to go back and see what the effects of those rules are.
No, not at all. I think what we're doing is we're focused on designing technology standards in a way that the industry can make investments, long-term investments. I'll give you a good example. The power plant rules that we just announced, there were 4 rules that focused on carbon, mercury, water, and coal ash cleanup. When I spent time with the utility industry 2 years ago, they said, hey, instead of dying by 1,000 paper cuts, just present these regulations in some bundles so that we can make longer-term investments, because there are co-benefits in some of those investments and the like. And so what we're doing is trying to do more of that. And we have a slew of rules. We have hundreds of rules that by law and by Congress we're required to put out. We've been asked by the industry, various industries, can you work on some of these rules in a simultaneous manner so that we know what we're getting and investing in? So that's why we're asking for some of these additional FTEs.
How many unfilled positions are there currently in the EPA?
How many vacant positions do we have?
Our utilization is 14,300, and our ceiling is 15,130, so about 700 positions.
About 700 positions.
700?
Yes.
So wouldn't it make sense before you ask for 2,000 more employees to fill the 700 that you've already got appropriation for?
Well, listen, we are ramping up in some of this hiring. Some of these skill sets are very hard to ascertain. Obviously, there's some matriculation going on, so it's not necessarily a full 700 people on every given day. But
Well, that's the answer you just gave me.
well, right, that's the number that we have today, but we have people
All right,
going out and coming in.
Let's shift gears just a little bit. Less than a week ago, on Thursday, April 26th, your agency issued a new regulation that expedites the requirement for coal-fired power plants to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 90% by the year 2039. What's your instruction to them? What's the plan? What actions will they take do you think, to reduce their emissions by 90%?
You know, it'll vary. I think what Duke Energy will do in North Carolina will be drastically different than what happens in West Virginia or Texas. There's a process that we have in place. They have a number of years to comply. As a former regulator, I'll tell you, they will work, each state secretary will work with their utility to design a state implementation plan.
So what are the possibilities?
There are a number of possibilities, ranging from the choice of running their plant differently from an efficiency standpoint, because they may be shifting more of their demand from coal to natural gas or some other generation source that they've chosen. There are technologies like CCS that they may choose. So there are fuel, there are technology switches, there are new technologies that they may be adding. As a matter of fact, some are looking at retiring some asset and bringing some new assets online. I think obviously nuclear energy and other things will be in play.
Coal
So
is the plan.
no, I think that the plan offers control technologies that will reduce emissions if a plant decides to continue with
Yeah,
coal.
with all due respect, I just asked the question, what would be your instructions to them to reduce emissions by 90%? And in your explanation, you said switch to natural gas and nuclear and some of these other things. That's stopping to use, or that effectively is an order to not use.
No, there's a coal plant in Texas right now using CCS technology. What I don't want to do is what you're asking me to do, which is tell them what to do. I think we've given them a suite of options. We've talked to a lot of these utility CEOs. There are a number of ways that they can meet the emission reductions that we've laid out. So without being too prescriptive, I think the rule lays out a plethora of options and routes that they could choose.
One more question, Mr. Chair, if I may. The EPA's new Endangered Species Act herbicide strategy adds significant cost and new regulatory burdens to the agriculture community. I'm hearing that from farmers in North Carolina especially. Many farmers say that they might go broke trying to comply with these new restrictions, while others wouldn't even have a choice. Can you detail to me how the EPA plans to make these proposals workable for agriculture so that they don't put family farms out of business?
Yeah, I'll say that you and I are probably talking to the same folks in North Carolina. I think we share those relationships. And no farmer should wake up in the middle of a growing season and have to choose or take a tool out of the toolbox. I think who has taken those choices out have been the courts. I think EPA's administering of the Endangered Species Act for 30-plus years proves that. And so what I will say is a number of farm groups have spoken positively about these new strategies and updated plans that we've laid out, including groups like American Soybean Association and Ag Retailers Association. So what I would say is we are trying our best to put this pesticides program back on track. And in one place, I'll say that unfortunately Congress just cut our pesticides budget. But when I talk to the Farm Bureau, my folks back at home, what they're asking us to do is increase the staff there so that we can put some of these newer products on the market, because we're seeing the courts consistently both tie the farmers' hands and tie EPA's hands. And I think we've seen that with dicamba, and I think we've seen that with some other pesticides and herbicides that, quite frankly, many farmers rely on.
For yet another year, the budget request proposes to zero out funding for the Rural Water Technical Assistance Grants, which is currently funded at just over $30 million. It's unfortunate that we play games with this program by zeroing it out to make room for other priorities, because you know Congress will put the money back in. It just doesn't send the right message to the folks in our states who are working very hard every day to help ensure our rural communities have access to safe drinking water. But that's why I will work with my colleagues to ensure the program is continued and not zeroed out as is proposed in this budget. The agency has been trying to change the way funding is awarded under this program. I expressed my opposition at the end of last year and will reiterate it again now. Can you commit that the agency will continue to operate this program on a one-year funding cycle, and can you commit that the agency will follow the congressional direction to award funding to organizations that are most qualified and experienced in providing training and technical assistance to small public water systems.
I can absolutely agree that we will follow congressional direction 100%. And I can tell you that I've been briefed on the games, the budget games that have been played for a number of years. I will say that the thing that I'm heartened by is there was $43 billion from the bipartisan infrastructure law to invest in water infrastructure. We've already invested, or our plan is to invest up to $500 million in water technical assistance programs through just 2024, including increasing funding excuse me, for the National Rural Water Association and Rural Community Assistance Program. So what we've done is at EPA, we've focused on the ability to have a concrete, consistent stream of revenue going to our rural communities, recognizing that there are lots of budget maneuvers that have happened in the past. This is the way to make sure that the money gets to these rural communities.
Well, I appreciate that because this rural water technical assistance program has been working, frankly. When I talk to small communities that have, as we talked on the phone the other day, have a water system that maybe it's a town of 1,000 people, they don't have the ability to go out and hire somebody with the technical assistance to really meet the Clean Water Act, the Clean and Safe Drinking Water Act, and all those different acts and stuff like that. Who do they turn to? They turn to the people they know, and that's
right.
The people in the local rural communities, the rural water assistance programs that give them great advice, and that's how it has worked in the past, and I think it's working very well, and that's why Congress continues to support it. So I suspect you'll see some money put back into that program in this budget when we finish it. So
Thank you.
I know you are. Beyond that, I hope to see you out in Idaho at the water test bed.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Sounds good. Thanks for being here today. If there's no other questions, committee's adjourned.